Down in the southern Indian state of Kerala, there's this place where ancient myths have forged an incredible pact. A pact between humans and, get this, one of nature's most feared creatures, the snake. So let's start with a puzzle. Imagine you're walking through the forest and temple grounds of Kerala. You'd find something pretty remarkable. Just countless stone idols of serpents everywhere. It makes you wonder, right? What is the story behind this deep, deep reverence for snakes?
Well, these places are called Sarppakavus, which basically means sacred serpent groves. And to really get what they're about, we have to go way, way back, all the way to the creation of the land itself. It's an origin story that sets up this incredible pact between gods, humans, and snakes.
Okay, let's dive into it. This foundational myth, it is absolutely the key to understanding everything that follows. It's a story of how a totally barren land was made fertile through a divine and, you guessed it, serpentine intervention.
So the story goes like this. The warrior sage Parasurama literally creates Kerala right out of the sea. But there's a problem. The new land is way too salty to support any life. So what does he do? He appeals to the serpent king, Nagaraja. And the king's followers, they come and use their venom to make the soil fertile. How incredible is that? This one act establishes this crucial, eternal pact. See, in Kerala, serpents aren't intruders or pests. Oh no, they are the original guardians who made life itself possible. And in return, humans promise them a permanent protected home. And you know what? It's a promise that's been kept for centuries. So you can imagine, this ancient pact led to thousands of these sacred spaces popping up all across Kerala. And we're talking a huge range here, from tiny family-run groves kind of tucked away in people's backyards, all the way up to these massive, internationally known temple complexes dedicated entirely to the serpent gods. Now, the most common way this worship happens is at these Sarppakavus. They're basically preserved patches of forest, and you'll often find them in the southwest corner of an ancestral property. What's so cool is that it's a living tradition. Families see themselves as protectors of these little mini sanctuaries. And this tradition, it finds its absolute grandest expression at places like the Manarasala temple. I mean, picture this. It's nestled in a forest glade, and it's home to a truly unbelievable sight. We're talking over 100,000 images of snakes. They line every single path, they're clustered among the trees, all brought by devotees over generations. Just amazing. But Manarasala has something else that's completely unique. You see, unlike most temples in Kerala, its main rituals are actually performed by High Priestess. She's known as the Amma. And the legend behind it is that the original serpent god was born into the protector family, so this whole practice honors the mother who first cared for him. It's a really special tradition.
Okay, so we've talked about the groves and the idols, but these beliefs, they're not just static things. They are brought to life through these vibrant, hypnotic, and deeply mystical rituals that have been passed down for generations. And the most spectacular of them all has to be Sarpam Thullal, which translates to the dance of snakes. And this is no simple thing. It's a really complex ceremony that can last for days. It's all held to appease the snake gods and ask for their blessings, especially for things like fertility and prosperity. So who actually performs this ritual? Well, it's orchestrated by two key groups. First, you have the Pulluva community. They are the hereditary keepers of this secret art. They're the musicians and the singers. And then you have the kanyas. These are typically young girls from the family who haven't reached puberty yet. And their role is crucial. They act as the vessels, the mediums for the serpent deities to actually manifest. Now, the music is absolutely central to creating this hypnotic atmosphere. The Pulluvas use these really special instruments, like the one-stringed Pulluvan veena and the Pulluvan Kutam, which is this cool earthen pot drum. Together, they create this otherworldly sound that just guides the entire ceremony. And this is the climax of the whole thing. As the music gets more and more intense, the kanyas, who are holding these clusters of arcanut flowers, they start to enter a trance. They begin to sway and dance, and eventually they wipe away the intricate floor drawing with their movements. It's this incredibly powerful symbol that the serpent gods have accepted the offering. I mean, in that moment, the boundary between the physical and the spiritual world, it just seems to dissolve. All right, so that's the ancient tradition. But how does all of this fit into our modern 21st century world?
Does it still hold meaning? And what kind of challenges is it facing today? Let's take a look.
Well, for a lot of people, these temples are still incredibly powerful spiritual centers. Just take a look at the visitor reviews for another major serpent temple, Ananthan Kondu. It's overwhelmingly positive. The vast majority of people describe it as this serene, divine place. It really suggests that the spiritual energy of these groves is still resonating deeply with visitors today.
But, the reality on the ground is a little more complex. Because alongside all that praise for the peaceful atmosphere, some visitors are definitely noting the pressures of the modern world. They're pointing to issues like commercialization or even poor staff behavior, which they feel can kind of tarnish the whole spiritual experience. But here's where it gets really interesting. Beyond the rituals and the temples, this whole tradition of serpent worship has had this profound and maybe completely unintentional legacy. And it's one that is more relevant today than it has ever been.
Think about it. By forbidding any human interference, we're talking no cutting trees, no killing snakes, no disturbing the grove, all out of religious respects and, frankly, fear of a curse, the tradition created thousands of these little mini forests. And today, ecologists recognize these Sarppakavus as vital biodiversity hotspots. They're protecting rare plants, and they're helping to conserve soil and water right in the middle of populated areas. It's conservation through belief.
So it all leads to this really powerful question for our time, doesn't it? As we're all searching for new ways to live more sustainably, maybe the wisdom we need isn't new at all. Perhaps it's been with us this whole time, just woven into these ancient stories that teach us how to make peace with the wild and how to find our place within it.